cameras flashed, the room buzzing with an electric energy that only a few figures in the world could command. But on this particular day, two of the most polarizing names in their respective fields stood face to face in the most powerful office in the world. Conor McGregor, brash, unpredictable, and always the center of attention, had just stepped into the Oval Office, an arena far different from the ones where he'd made his name. And waiting for him, smiling with that unmistakable self-assurance, was the 47th President of the United States, Donald Trump. It was an encounter no one had expected, but one that made perfect sense in retrospect. Two men known for their charisma, their larger-than-life personas, and their ability to command unwavering loyalty from their supporters. And now, here they were, standing just inches apart, exchanging words that, in another world, might have been fight promotions. But today, this wasn't about a fight inside an octagon. This was something much bigger. The world watched as McGregor, who had remained largely away from the fighting scene since that fateful night when his leg shattered against Dustin Poirier, shook hands with the man who had just days before publicly praised him. The social media firestorm had barely begun to settle when McGregor found himself stepping through the White House doors. Was this just a meeting of mutual admiration, or was there something more brewing beneath the surface? Trump, ever the showman, had already set the stage. Days earlier, while speaking to Irish politicians, he had singled out McGregor, calling him one of the greatest fighters to come out of Ireland, a statement that instantly ignited speculation. Was Trump aligning himself with McGregor for political reasons? Or was he simply a genuine fan? After all, this wasn't the first time the former president had shown a deep interest in the UFC. But McGregor wasn't one to simply bask in praise. He had his own agenda, and as he sat across from Trump in the Oval Office, he wasted no time addressing the issues he believed needed attention. The conversation quickly veered toward Irish politics, an unusual sight, seeing McGregor shift from fight talk to policy discussion. But to those who had followed his career closely, this wasn't entirely surprising. He had, after all, never been shy about his opinions, especially when it came to Ireland's direction. Illegal migration was at the top of his concerns, and he made that clear to Trump. What was striking, though, wasn't just what they talked about, but the mutual respect between them. McGregor, never one to mince words, looked Trump straight in the eye and said something that caught even the seasoned politicians in the room off guard. "Congratulations, your work ethic is inspiring." For all of McGregor's bravado, his tendency to mock and ridicule his opponents, here he was, offering genuine praise to a man as controversial as himself. Trump, never one to let a compliment hang in the air too long without reciprocating, leaned in and without hesitation, fired back. "Yours is too. You're fantastic." And just like that, two men who had built their reputations on defying expectations found themselves in a moment of unfiltered admiration. But was this meeting purely about respect, or was there something more strategic at play? McGregor had long been one of the most talked about figures in combat sports, even without stepping foot in the cage for nearly 4 years. Yet, here he was, shaking hands with a president known for backing winners. Trump had openly supported fighters like Colby Covington and even had ties to Dana White, the UFC's boss, a relationship that had played a crucial role in shaping the organization's rise to mainstream success. Could McGregor's visit be signaling something bigger? Perhaps a calculated move to stay relevant in an industry where being out of sight often meant being out of mind? And what did this mean for McGregor's fighting future? The Irishman had been teasing a comeback for years now, with fans growing increasingly impatient. He was once slated to fight Michael Chandler, a fight that UFC had hyped for months before injuries derailed it. Now, with the year creeping toward its end, whispers of his return had started up again. But was he truly gearing up for another war in the octagon, or was he slowly transitioning into a different kind of battlefield, one that didn't require gloves, but rather political and social influence? Outside the White House, reporters clamored for any hint of what had just transpired behind closed doors. Speculation ran wild. Was McGregor using his meeting with Trump to forge a new path beyond fighting? Or was this simply a matter of two icons, cut from the same cloth, finding common ground in their relentless pursuit of dominance? One thing was certain: McGregor wasn't done making headlines. And whether it was inside the cage or in the corridors of power, he was determined to keep the world watching. Would he return to the UFC? Would he take his influence to an entirely new arena? One thing was certain: this wasn't the last we'd hear of McGregor's latest move. And if history had taught us anything, it was that whatever he did next, it would be impossible to ignore. But then, just as the dust seemed to settle, a new piece of information emerged, something that would throw everything into question. Something that hinted at an even bigger story unfolding behind the scenes. Just when the media thought they had pieced together the puzzle, whispers from inside the White House hinted at something even bigger, something that had gone unnoticed amid the spectacle of two giants shaking hands. McGregor's visit wasn't just about pleasantries or mutual admiration. It was a strategic move, a carefully orchestrated play that would soon send shockwaves through both the political and sporting worlds. Because behind closed doors, beyond the cameras and reporters shouting questions, there were discussions that went far deeper than the public was led to believe. Sources close to the meeting began leaking fragments of the conversation, hints of a possible long-term alliance, an unspoken agreement between two men who understood the power of influence better than most. McGregor wasn't just visiting as a celebrity athlete. He was positioning himself as something more, something bigger. And the implications of that were staggering. Could McGregor, the same man who built his empire with trash talk and knockouts, be laying the groundwork for something far beyond the octagon? Could he be aligning himself for a role in shaping Ireland's future in a way no one saw coming? For years, McGregor had been a vocal critic of various political issues, but his words had always seemed like the impassioned outbursts of a fighter rather than the calculated rhetoric of a politician. Yet, this meeting with Trump, his focus on Ireland's migration policies, and his visible interest in governance painted a different picture, one that suggested he was no longer content just being an entertainer. He was looking beyond his legacy as a fighter. He was eyeing something far more permanent. And Trump? He had built his career on spotting potential, on surrounding himself with winners, on leveraging relationships to create a network of loyal supporters who could help further his cause. Did he see something in McGregor beyond the brash persona? Was this more than just a meeting of mutual respect? Was this the beginning of a strategic alliance that would see McGregor propelled into a different kind of battlefield, one where fists were replaced with policies and political influence? As the world debated the possibilities, McGregor remained as unpredictable as ever. He left the White House with a smirk, refusing to answer questions, only posting a cryptic message to his millions of followers: "Big moves coming. Watch closely." And just like that, the speculation exploded. What did he mean? Was this about his fighting career? Or was this something bigger, something that would place him in a position of power outside of sports? Meanwhile, back in the world of MMA, the clock was ticking on his long-awaited return. Dana White had remained tight-lipped about McGregor's future, offering vague responses whenever questioned. But sources inside the UFC were growing increasingly uneasy. The longer McGregor stayed away, the more it seemed like he wasn't just recovering from injury, he was considering an entirely different path. And with the UFC already struggling to replace his star power, his absence was starting to leave a void that no other fighter could quite fill. But McGregor was a master strategist. He knew better than anyone that timing was everything. He had built his empire on controlling narratives, on making sure that when he spoke, the world listened. And now, standing at this crossroads, he was about to make a decision that could redefine his entire legacy. Would he return to the cage one last time to remind the world why he was once the most feared fighter on the planet? Or had his meeting with Trump set him on an entirely different course, one that no one had predicted? As the speculation reached fever pitch, another layer of the story began to emerge, one that no one had anticipated. Because while the world was busy wondering whether McGregor was plotting a move into politics, a select few insiders had caught wind of something even more shocking. Something that could change the course of combat sports forever. Whispers of a super fight had started circulating, a fight so massive, so unprecedented that it would make every other bout in UFC history look like a mere sideshow. And the opponent? None other than a name McGregor had been avoiding for years. A name that, if confirmed, would set the combat sports world on fire. For years, fans had speculated about a rematch between McGregor and Khabib Nurmagomedov, the undefeated Russian who had humbled him in one of the most infamous fights in UFC history. But with Khabib retired, that seemed impossible. Until now. Because, according to leaked reports, McGregor's meeting with Trump had included discussions about bringing Khabib out of retirement for one final showdown on a scale that had never been seen before. Was this real? Could it actually happen? Or was this just another carefully placed rumor designed to keep the world guessing? One thing was certain: McGregor wasn't done shocking the world. And whether he was stepping back into the octagon, stepping into a new arena of power, or orchestrating a fight that would redefine combat sports forever, one thing was undeniable: he was about to make history once again. The only question now was, what move would he make next?